Hey y'all, what's happening? Chinese here, also known as China L. Colston, actress and independent filmmaker here in Brooklyn. Happy Saturday, everybody. So today we'll be doing a film reaction to the classic play that was adapted for television, A Raisin in the Sun by the masterful Lorraine Hansberry. Rest in peace to her. I'm joined by Cedric Riley. Cedric, introduce yourself and then we'll get going.
Hey everybody, my name is Cedric Riley. I am also based out of Brooklyn, New York, and I love to talk about movies and all things culture, and excited to be here today.
Okay, right on, cool. So Cedric, where do you want to start? Like, how did the movie impact you? You want to talk about the story, the characters, the issues surrounding what the characters experience? I'll let you start and then I'll just chime in. We'll just go back and forth.
I think that A Raisin in the Sun is a classic tragedy that really discusses a lot of the things that we still face in society today. It's been required reading for a lot of people. It was not required reading for me, but I definitely enjoy the themes of the work, whether it be sheer adversity, racism, difficulty in relationships. All those things are parts of my daily discussion as well. So I think it was a great work. I think it's something that we need to have more conversations about. It's relevant. Maybe a lot of people need to go back and look at the movie again or read the book again as well. And I like your take on it and follow your lead on it as well.
Okay, so I'm going to IMDb. Although we saw what we saw, we're going to react to the television adaptation of A Raisin in the Sun, directed by the wonderful Bill Duke, starring Esther Rowe, Danny Glover, and countless other talented actors and actresses. But let me just read you the synopsis for those who are not aware of A Raisin in the Sun, who didn't read it or who just aren't aware of it. So it says it's a drama. A substantial insurance payment could mean either financial salvation or personal ruin for a poor Black family on the south side of Chicago in the 50s, early 60s.
50s, yeah.
I think, yes, thank you. So I love this freaking story. I love this story. I love the play and this TV adaptation of it. A number of things stand out to me, but I'll just start out with, like, at the top of the morning. Raisin in the Sun was also inspired. The title was inspired by a poem by Langston Hughes titled A Dream Deferred, right? So I just wanted to establish that. Lorraine Hansberry in an interview said that she wanted to write this story that illustrated the dignity of American Black people. I need to say that. So I like the idea of, like, Walter Lee is asleep at the top of the story, and his wife is, basically being a house. I think wives and mothers are house managers. They're like, it's like she is the first one to awaken, and she's getting breakfast together, and she's waking up the child who's 11 years old, Travis. She's making sure he's getting into the shower and preparing food and waking up her husband, Walter Lee Younger. And she's herself is tired, but she's taking on the role of mother and wife and making sure everybody gets out to work and to school on time. She's tired, she's irritated, and she is expressing that towards Walter by yelling at him to get up. And we noticed that Walter Lee finally gets up and he talks about, his dream and asking about the $10,000 insurance check, because he is really relying on this insurance check to realize his dream deferred, right? He wants to use it to open a bar, to partner up with two other gentlemen to establish a bar, because he doesn't want to work for anyone else. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He has this entrepreneurial spirit, but he has to persuade the women in the house, his mother, his sister, his wife, to come aboard of this dream. And they're all in conflict to to him opening a bar with and then his wife doesn't trust the man that he wants to go into business with. I think it also speaks to, I'll be all over the place. Walter Lee, I like that Walter Lee Young is like, I don't want to work for anyone else. I'm over that. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to run things. I have ideas that's going to serve a business, and I want to go into a business with other men who are like-minded. But he wants to invest all of the money, the total $10,000, as opposed to a portion, and then divvy out the other portion because I'm sure the other family members have things they like to do with the money as well. But he's just thinking, I'm going to take the whole $10,000, right? And I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about how he was just like, I wanted to put all of it, as opposed to a portion of it. So what are your thoughts?
I think that is a classic man's take on how to deal with it. That actually sounds like something I would do. We got 10,000. I know exactly where that's going. It's going to be a big investment. It's going to pay off for everybody. And it's my idea. But I think, like I said, I think that is very relevant to what happens today. How do you get $10,000 and your big idea is to spend it on only what you want, and you're willing to, put your 2 feet down about that? I think it speaks toward a little bit of male ego, sometimes out of touch, but it's funny because I literally saw this happen before. And the person who took control of the $10,000 was my uncle. And he had siblings. He had siblings. He had, no less than a dozen people who could have benefited from even $1,500.
Yeah.
But, the money was left to him and he didn't divvy it out. And it was $10,000. He took it and he did what he wanted to do with it. And so, I just find high resonance with this aspect of you come into $10,000 and there's a man who wants to do what he wants to do with it.
So his wife, and I also appreciate that how she wrote these characters. So the wife is pretending. He brings up the whole check. Oh, the check is coming tomorrow. Leave me alone. Let me just make this breakfast for you, and I don't want to hear about your dreams. I'm over it. You talk about the same thing all the time. And he's trying to get her to persuade his mother to latch on to the idea, right? Because he's thinking this is going to get us out of poverty, right? So it's kind of like we invest and then we'll see a return at some point. Now, he's not thinking that sometimes you don't see a return into 5 years, right? So
right.
Before you get to 5 years, what do you do then if you gave all the $10,000 away? But also his wife is pretending like she says, y'all, that's just your mother's money. That's not our money. But it is his money too, because his father earned it brick by brick, as he said, right? And Ruth is pretending like she doesn't care about what happens to the money, but when you find out, when we discover that his mother purchased a house, put a down payment on a house, you see how elated she is, and at that moment she talks about this as a rat trap, and she uses profanity, and you don't even see. I didn't see that coming, but you can tell that she's talking about leave misery alone. She's been miserable. I think Cedric too, because you get married to someone, you definitely don't want to move into the house of their mother, right? You expect to, right? And that she talked about how they had plans when they got married, just like his mother and father had plans. They got to stay in that apartment for 1 year and then save up enough to move out. But sometimes, systemic issues, especially at that time, there's a lot of opposition. And if you don't have the adequate education to overcome those obstacles, sometimes you kind of like, you're right there, you're stagnant. And she was like just over living in that environment, but I think it seemed like she never expressed it until she was told that they would be moving into a big home, or at least a house that they own. And then the sister Benita, who was in medical school or undergrad to go to medical school, she was also pretending like it's mama's money, it's not my money. But we find out that she really was banking on that money to go towards her medical education. What are your thoughts about how the women reacted to the money, how they wanted to use it or didn't want to use it.
You know, it seems like, yeah. For me, it sounds like, you know, pride amongst women as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't accept the help because you're so busy trying to do it on your own. You know, on one hand, and when I say do it on your own, I mean you're trying to make a way to come, you know, the obstacles that you feel are in your life, and there's other next to you. Everybody has different objectives, and see is a difficulty of people, women in this case, of working together. You know, of saying, you know what, we have a pie, let's split the pie without a qualm, without an argument, without so much of a discrepancy. And I see that in our society today as well. Sisters, how many sisters are not able to because they have their own life, you know, or they're not able to work with the mother because everybody's got their own life and their own agenda. I think it speaks toward our need to figure out how to actually work together and how to move with synergy. And it's a classic scenario that still goes on today.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts about, for example, the scene where little Travis says, the first thing Travis says in the morning, I think it was interesting, is the check's coming tomorrow, right? And she's like, get your mind off of money and eat your breakfast. And then he said, okay, fine. So he says, well, right, you know, the teacher said to bring 50 cents to school. She said, I ain't got 50 cents. And I've heard that a million times as a child, right? And then he was like, okay, right, yep, fine. You don't have 50 cents. Then he still doesn't give up, Cedric. He says, well, can I go, you know, carry groceries after school and earn 50 cents? No, don't do that either, because it's getting cold. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to me, that's like an example of him trying to tap into his manhood, which is like, you know, being a provider, providing for himself. Like, let me earn the money to meet the need that I have as an 11-year-old, right? But his mother's like, no, it's too cold outside. So to me, she's kind of stifling. And then when he tells Walter Lee Younger that he doesn't have the 50, he's like, why did you tell him that? She's like, because we don't have it. But I'm thinking, for Walter Lee, I'm not a man, that's a sense, like, don't tell my son that we don't have 50 cents. Like, and then Walter Lee gives him 50 cents, and then he gives him an extra 50 cents to take a cab or get some fruit. Because I felt like Walter Lee needed to feel like, I need to feel like I'm a provider, and it makes me feel good to be able to give my son what he's asking for, right? Even though I'm struggling. And then later he asked his wife, can you give me 50 cents? I need 50 cents to get to work, but I needed to save face in front of my son. What are your thoughts about that interaction with Walter Lee needing to give his son 50 cents, even though they really didn't have it in the budget?
You know, when a man is a position of leadership, either in the community or in his own family, he has a need to feed the growth of the young man. Sometimes even to your own, you know, financial detriment. You want to condone, you know, this child's instinct of earning, and so he made a sacrifice to support his son's dream, his son's dream of the notion of independence, the notion of manhood. I find a lot of strength in that. You know, he potentially gave that young man something that he didn't even have. You know, and so you're learning manhood on two different levels. From the adult, you're learning that you have to sacrifice to provide for the glimpse of manhood that one day is going to turn into a full-blown image of your son. But on the other hand, you see the beginnings of insight of what a man is. A man is somebody who figures out how to get it. You know, the son is saying, listen, can you give it to me, or do I need to earn it? You know, and so there's two interesting dynamics. You got the alpha and the omega, if you will, of manhood in that scenario.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I like that the playwright wrote that Travis says, "Mom, do you got 50 cents?" No, Mom, the teacher said I need 50 cents. I ain't got it. Okay. Well, let me earn it. No, don't do that either. And it's
Right.
kind of like this
Right.
kind of repressing the seed of manhood in him, that provider. And she's not doing it
Yeah.
maliciously. It's just,
Yeah.
I want to, it's cold outside. Just come on home. But it's like, no, let him do it. He's just carrying groceries. You know what I'm saying? So he has this entrepreneurial spirit like his father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Manhood in this whole scenario is the overwhelming thing. It's the man who's an adult, who's like dealing with not being able to provide right now and in the future. Like, they're not wealthy yet. Yes. And as a man, why are we not wealthy yet? And so I'm going to take this $10,000 and do what is the greater necessity for a whole. I'm going to make an executive decision as a man and spend this $10,000 in order to put us in a position of abundance, because then I'll really feel like a bona fide man. And so I want to place that above everybody. And then you have the son, who is the next generation. Now we're talking about 2 generations of males really trying to establish a bona fide masculinity. And you have women who are right there in your face with some insecurities, and with some pride and with some earnestness in their heart. And so it just makes for a deep, thick dynamic, for real.
Yeah. It's interesting because so Walter Lee's wife, Ruth, like, we can tell that she's not formally educated, like his sister Benita. Mm-hmm. You can tell she hadn't gone to college, or maybe she had high school, maybe 8th grade. But so the way in which she communicates is not as eloquent as Benita. She can't really clap back and fire back like Benita, Right. Because Walter Lee can criticize her for being a Black woman, not being supportive. But if he says it to Benita's going to clap back with some intelligence real quick, right? Yeah. She's going to come real quick. Because if he criticizes the Black woman, she's going to criticize the Black man. Well, what about this? Right. So he can't pull one over on Benita like he can with his wife Ruth. Right. And it was interesting. Let's talk about the mother, the matriarch of the family, Mama Lena, how she has such a strong and loving and gentle, wise presence in the family. As soon as she come on in the awakens and come into the living room, we just feel her presence. I feel this sense of warmth and love and confidence. And again, not formally educated, but wise. Right? And wisdom will take you a long way over just formal education over certain subject matters. I love how she also, Cedric, had an agenda with that insurance money. Now, she didn't let on early on, but she said she had always had a dream of having her own house. She talked about her and her husband had a dream of having their own home, but that didn't get realized before her husband passed away. How they had a child and child died, I guess maybe shortly after the child was born, again, connected to poverty, right? Not having maybe the adequate nutrition or whatever. And how she always had, and she put a down payment. She was acting like she didn't know what she wanted to do with that money, but I think she always knew that she was going to put a down payment on a house. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah. She reminds me of grandmothers that I've known. The wisdom to not, sit in the living room and argue with all of y'all. But in the back of my mind and in my heart, I know what I'm actually going to do. And so the wisdom shows itself when she commits to action without necessarily committing to the argument. And so she reminds me of the grandmother who has soul. Now, soul is a lot of intelligence, it's intellect, it's emotional intelligence, it's being able to read the room, it's being able to almost tell the future. And that's completely separate from academic. That's where the real power is in humanity. And I find so much idealism in the whole scenario, and grandma is no different. The way that grandma wants a big house so that everybody can have the actual foundation that they need to go out into the world. And you know, if grandma had it her way, it would be a nice big house with a kitchen for her to provide a proper meal for everybody to go out there and do what they need to do, as opposed to everybody being on top of everybody. And so, you know, when grandma puts the down payment on the house, that's like her way of saying, regardless of what everybody's ideas are, I was working on arriving as a Black woman before some of you were even born. So, you know, you're not going to get in the way of my arrival either. And so, you know, all these different characters are trying to arrive, and we're looking at multiple generations of one family trying to arrive all at the same time with different objectives. And my grandma is no different, and she actually came through by putting that down payment on the house.
Oh wow, yeah. That's a great perspective. Yeah, I love all the wisdom she espoused. I love that although her husband has passed away, he's very present in their lives. They're always referencing him, talking about his dignity and stand up, you know, I want to see you stand up there and talk like your father and be a man that he was. So the manhood was very respected in that household, as was the womanhood, right? So like even when Walter Lee got out of pocket and snapped at his mother, she's like, I don't allow no loud talking in my house. You know, essentially, you will respect me. Now, we don't have to agree, but you will respect me and your wife as long as I'm at head of this household, right? But Walter Lee felt overwhelmed. He felt like, he said, sometimes he wake up and he just see his future just nothing, just a blank full of nothing. And also with to talk about Benita was a very intelligent young lady, very spirited, very passionate, opinionated, had a great understanding about life. She was also, you know, uncommonly an atheist in a Black family at that time, to express it so boldly, you know, and giving all the credit to man for miracles and such. And we discovered that why she accredits man for miracles, because her own childhood friend, you know, he had a major accident when they were outside playing in the wintertime. And so she discovered that doctors, you know, through the gift of healing, healed the young man. And so she attributed all that to man creates miracles, because I guess in her assessment, her childhood friend should have been dead, right? But the fact that, you know, man, right. doctors were able to heal him, she attributed healing solely to mankind and not to the creator, if that's what you believe. I believe in a creator, because I didn't create my intricate body or my brain or the trees or the sun or the moon. So, but that's just personal. But she was very like, I'm going to be a doctor. No, I don't want to be a nurse. I know that's what was expected of me in the 1950s, but I have loftier ideas. I feel I'm smart enough to be a doctor. I'm passionate enough, and I want to be a part of the healing of this world. And Walter Lee Younger, big brother, you will not stop me. And I'm going to use that money. I'm going to pretend like I don't want to use that money for medical school, but deep down inside, I do want a portion of that to go to my medical school. What are your thoughts? And then she's also a feminist, and she was arguing back and forth with George Murchison because, you know, he likes her, he's attracted to her, I think she's intelligent, but she likes to talk. So what are your thoughts about the Benita character and how she interacted with Walter Lee Younger, her mother, and just everybody? What are your thoughts about her and her agenda and personality?
You know, she reminds me of a lot of women in our current era. You know, she reminds me of a lot of women in the past 20 or 30 years who have decided to become more of an earner financially, academically, in terms of ownership, and really pronouncing her identity to the world. She is a reflection of where so many women are today. And so, first of all, I respect her character. I respect the fact that she was placed in literature during a time when it was not typical for a woman to do what she was desiring to do in that book. And so it was prophetic because now so many more women are along those lines. Now, that being the case, I think that she was also a practical person. She was not easily swayed by philosophies, that weren't necessarily backed by facts. So like in today's world where women say, well, where are the receipts? I don't just want your ideas. I want to see the receipts. I want to see the actual facts behind this before I believe in it. When she says that a doctor is almost like a God, if you will, if you want to talk about God so much, because I seen him heal my friend. I think that's very practical of her. And that's a very no nonsense way of saying, I can get the results that you pray for. And that's a loophole. That's a loophole that makes you a powerful member of our society. When you say, I know you've been given a lot of credit for this to the higher realms, but I understand that I also have some power to contribute to this. In this case, the healing and the health management of others. We just can't eat collard greens and ham and then pray that we get diabetes. We have to begin to understand what we're putting into our bodies. We have to begin to understand how to address our health, our diet, medicines, what's good and what's not good. And we don't have to wait for Jesus to come and do that for us. And so she represents the no nonsense factor that a lot of our families have and that every family should have.
Yeah, I really like Benita. Benita is a fireball. But even though she did not believe in a creator or an eternal spirit that resides within all humanity, she still respected her mother, right? She still said, I'm not going to go out and commit any crimes or anything. Like, I mean, I know, and her mother smacked her. Like, I love that exchange. Her mother's like, in my house, because she was so like, it's one thing to say, I don't believe in God, but don't be so disrespectful to the person who does, who's nurtured you and cared for you. Like, you just have your belief, but because she was so like, well, there is no blasted God. Her mother slapped her and it's like, just, like, there's some cutoff, there's some boundaries that has to happen, and respect of my mother. Let me respect my mother's faith. It's not mine, but I got to respect her faith, right? And so the repercussions were she got slapped in the face. But she still loved and respected her mother. And another instance was like when she had a date with George Murchison, the guy, not the Nigerian, but the American Black guy. And he was just basically, he was attracted to her, but he wasn't interested in really hearing her thoughts too much because he felt like she talked too much. And that's an entertainment activity she liked to do, was converse and debate and talk about the world and things like that. And that intrigued her. And he was just like, let's get down to it, right? He wanted to be intimate and maybe take her out for dinner or whatever, but she was more stimulated by conversation. And,
right.
He also talked about, you women always talking about you being so liberated. If you were so liberated, you wouldn't have to talk about it so much. There's no need for an announcement if you are truly liberated. And I thought that was an interesting point. And how she called him an assimilationist and basically a coon, because he basically said we have no culture, you have no heritage. It's just a bunch of some drums and some real ignorant stuff he was saying about West African cultures. He was basically like, I am not African, okay? I was born and raised in this particular country. We have our own culture. Stop reaching back to trying to find your identity. Your identity is right here, and be proud of that. So what are your thoughts about how George Murchison and Benita really didn't really care for it? They were attracted to one another and would, I guess, enjoy cultural things like the theater and such. But at the core, they didn't really bond. What are your thoughts about their interactions and their relationship?
I think that Benita and George represent two potentially elite Black African Americans, and how both of them is a little bit of an extremist.
Mm-hmm.
And so they become like oil and water, because here she is going so far into academia that she thinks that she can go against the wisdom of her mother and her grandmother. I know for a fact there is no God, because I'm over here immersed in this. And when you get into a space with a man who has a similar aptitude, who can respond to you, with a certain amount of gravity, then I think that there are checks and balances. And so she realizes, well, I am a little bit over the edge, a little bit, because at the end of the day, I do value romance, and they clash. Yeah, they clash, but she does value romance. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you have George. George is wealthy. He's potentially an elite African American, and here he is attempting to assert his entire ideology over her in whatever instinct, and in that moment, not realizing that a woman is not going to be totally swayed by you just because of your achievements or your whatever, how much money you have, And so I think, again, they represent the coming together of some elite men and women who don't always mesh, because you get the academic part, but you don't get the soul aspect. Mm-hmm. You get the achievement out there in the world, but you don't have the rites of passage of the soul, if that resonates the right way in this conversation. And so the soul in academia is usually two different directions.
Right.
And so when you have two people who have gone the academic route, but your soul is the one that's jumping out. Your soul is the one jumping out, making you, feel certain ways and do certain things. But when you always try to take an academic standpoint, then you got a gap in the middle that, only your soul could speak to. So I think you're really looking at two people who are potentially losing their soul, or potentially willing to sell their soul. And that's going to prevent them from actually forming an unconditional bond.
Yeah, exactly. I like too how, like, I love Cedric when Mama, the grandmother, she talks with the wife Ruth when everybody's away, and she talks about her husband. Yeah, and how she said he was a fine man. He loved his children. She's like, he wasn't perfect. He had his ways, wild with the women and kind of stubborn. But he loved his children, and when they lost their newborn, it grieved him so, it pained him so, and how he would have, she said, have water standing in his eyes. So to me, that suggests sometimes he would come home from work crying, just feeling like his potential was not realized. Like, and she said, he always said a man, being a servant was no job for a man. Man is supposed to be making things, adding things to the world, not being a servant. And so you can tell that Walter Lee Younger had inherited that philosophy. That's why he didn't want to be the car person, the driver for some white man or any man. He didn't want, he had this entrepreneurial spirit like his father. That wasn't realized for him. But as she said, he always, it seemed like God, didn't see fit to have the Negro, have his dream, but he did have children, maybe to have those dreams realized through his children. And unfortunately, through his death, his insurance payment, now Travis, his own grandson, will inherit a house. Travis will have he inherited a house because of the choice his grandmother made to buy a house, right? And so Travis will not have to experience the kind of poverty they experience because he will have grown up in the house. And I'm thinking with all those adults, he'll probably go to college like Benitha, right? He'll be the second person in their family to have graduated college and to have his own house. He will not have to buy a house as an adult because he would have inherited because of what the choice his grandmother made. What are your thoughts about that? I just think it was so beautifully written.
Yeah, it was beautifully written, and it's powerful that that was able to be achieved for Travis. The notion that somehow or another all these efforts is going to pay off for the next generation is what I want to say. It's what we all want. You know, sometimes people don't feel like their full potential is realized, and then they go have children because at least if I can figure out how to buy formula and diapers in my life, then I feel like I'm adding to the next generation. Well, yeah, I didn't graduate high school, but guess what? I'm working here. I'm making enough money to provide for my baby, and so now I'm a productive member of society. Now my purpose is being a little bit more fulfilled because I am providing for this child, and my hope is that this child is going to have a better life than what I've had. And so what we have seen is thousands of people, if not millions of people, feeling like their life is cut short, but then they decide to pass it forward by having a child. And so Travis is a product of that. And so for him to be able to claim benefit and claim an inheritance is it's making him a pioneer. It's making him a first generation foundational Black American. You know, and when I say foundational, I mean he's got his own place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is the premier achievement of everybody's efforts for Travis to actually have inheritance. And I think it's a great example for what so many families are trying to do. You know, maybe dad, maybe you don't get to make your big investment. Maybe you got to compromise with grandma and wife and auntie and sister and cousin. But if the children benefit in a way that sets them up so that they never have to be a servant, they never have to be subservient, then it was all worth it. It was all worth it. And so, you know, Travis he's a star in the grand scheme of the entire story. And it's a reminder at what a lot of us are still working towards today.
Yeah, and Cedric, to add to that, not only will Travis inherit a house, guess who else will? Their baby that hasn't been born yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's equity. They'll be able to borrow against the equity of the house, you know, and because she has the writer wrote that Travis has an entrepreneurial spirit, he's definitely going to sustain that house. He's probably going to buy more homes because he already has it in him to earn money for himself. If you can't give me the money, then I'll find a way to earn the money myself. So that's already in him. And that's also in the, it was like, it's this hand, it's like this generation, like their grandfather you can tell he probably had an entrepreneurial spirit because he understood that he wasn't supposed to be a servant. He understood that, because some people, they don't understand. They don't have that understanding that I'm supposed to contribute more to the world. Like what's what's inside of me is so much bigger than like, and everybody will not be an entrepreneur. Let's be clear about that. Because even entrepreneurs, we need employees, right? So everybody is, but that doesn't mean you can't contribute in some type of special way that's unique to you, to the world, to your community. So I really appreciate that about the writer expressing that Travis and his sister or his brother will inherit a home, because that is another way of inheriting generational wealth, is through home ownership, right? And so Walter Lee is, of course, really pissed. He's pissed at his mother for, like, you know, not expressing to him that she had planned on, she put a down payment on a house, because he wants to buy a business and be his own boss. But the thing is, like, if Walter Lee bought the bar and it takes like 3 to 5 years to see a profit, that means they'll all still be living in that same cramped apartment until they make substantial. And he's going into business with 2 other people, so you got to split the profits. So that may even prolong you finally being in a place to buy your house, right? So Walter Lee, I think it also speaks to sometimes we're not very in tune to like how to invest properly, how to have, diverse investments in stocks and bonds and really shop out residential and commercial property. So if we don't have that, he had the passion, the zeal, but he didn't have the knowledge of how to go about it properly. He tried to talk to George Murchison, like, me and your father should talk, because George Murchison's father was a successful businessman. But George Murchison was so highfalutin that he thought he was above Walter Lee Younger, because they were poor. So I thought that was interesting. So what are your thoughts about Benita and the Nigerian? How first she told her mother, don't ask any ignorant questions, assuming her mother is really ignorant because she's not formally educated. That doesn't mean you can't read newspapers or read books yourself, but she was like, don't embarrass me. What are your thoughts about when Asagai comes over and her mother's like, I can't pronounce your name, and I thought you're from Nigeria, and she doesn't know there's a tribal thing or tribal names and all that. So how did that interaction with Joseph, Asagai, and the mother and Benita, how did that impact you?
It impacted me in a certain type of way. I'll just say that. Okay. I always have both eyes open when an African American woman's or an African American man big idea is that, I'm gonna date an African from the continent of Africa, and we're just gonna live happily ever after, because inevitably there are huge cultural differences that you had no clue about. And I think that those things show their head in their interaction. And he loves her because she's, classic African American beauty. But at the end of the day, that cultural hurdle, she's intelligent. She's intelligent. They're both intelligent. But again, I think that cultural difference is absolutely huge. It's an elephant in the room when we broaden it out to African Americans and Africans, and why we don't work together as much as we could. There are really big cultural differences, and I think that those are exposed in their interaction. And I think it's a lesson for all of us, that there's a lot of work that has to be done in order for us to unite with Africans and for Africans to unite with us. Granted, we are of African descent as well, but the cultural differences cannot be ignored.
They're substantial.
You got some. Yeah, it's very substantial, and you have people who can be condescending on either side. Who can be condescending on either side, but there is an insidious desire to unite between African Americans and Africans. It's just really difficult to achieve, especially when you've gone the academic route. Again, you're not able to express your soul in a way that would overcome the cultural differences, because you've been so busy studying academia, and then again, looking at our greater culture, how many of us out of the book, how many of us have grandparents where one of them was a Native American and one of them was an African, and they got together and had a big family, and neither of them was college educated, neither of them was wealthy, but they were able to unite, bond, and have a family, versus this particular interaction where they're both educated, at least on the fringes of getting ahead in society, but there's a disconnect, and so I just think that it puts a magnifying glass on the difficulty of building romance with somebody that you're not culturally competent about.
Yes, totally agree. Exactly. What I thought was interesting was one scene where Benita, so after George Murchison, the American Black, and Benita come home after return from the theater, whatever, and she's trying to talk, and he's like, let's just kiss, you talk too much. And then he expresses something so idiotic, like, she said, well, what's the point of learning? Well, what's the point of going to school? We go to school to get a degree, to learn facts. It's not about understanding. It's like, to him, like, getting a college education was very formulaic. It was very factory-like. You do A, B, C, D, and E, and you get F, and then that's it. But he can speak like that because he comes from a wealthy family. Even if he doesn't get a degree, he'll be fine. Whereas her getting a degree is connected to, yes, she has a passion for healing, but it's going to increase, her earning power, right? Whereas that's not a concern for him. It's not a concern at all. And it's like he totally dismissed, what she offers, and he knows that she's intelligent, but he's kind of like, oh, that's nice, but you're still a woman. Who cares? Like, let's just be intimate. Like, I don't want to keep having a debate with you about all this. That's not important. But where she needs a man, or she desires a man who respects her intellect, who wants to have, interesting conversations about philosophy and sociology and history and all that jazz, but he's not interested in that. And then when he does leave, because when her mother comes home while they're arguing, her mother senses that there's an uneasiness between the two. And then she finally tells him to go home in a polite way, not combative way. And Benita says, she's, what happened? Like, George is a fool. And she's like, he is, baby? She's like, yeah. She's like, well, you shouldn't be with a fool, right? Regardless of how much money he has or has inherited through his father. Then she's like, well, you shouldn't be with him. And she says, Mom, thank you. Her mother says, thank you for what? For understanding me, for seeing me, basically. Like, you didn't minimize, what's important to me in a man. Like, you didn't say, well, he's wealthy, honey. Just never mind, the debate and being he's wealthy, get with him. She's like, no, thank you for understanding me. And it's like, to me in that moment, she was finally seen by her mother, like what was important to her, and her mother saw it and valued it. You want to speak to that?
Just the fact that at some point that deeper connection is going to show itself, the deeper connection that comes from within. In this entire story, I'm seeing opposite. You got two things happening at once. You have people who are strong people. They're resilient. They continue to overcome adversity. And what's really getting them through is the power of their spirit. It's the power of their soul, their spirit, that's really getting through all of this stuff. But at the same time, everybody's trying to go out into the world and do something tangible that can, like you said, increase their earning potential, that could, help them present themselves in the material world a little bit better. But it's the soul that continues to together, every time it seems like they could be falling apart. And so when the author shows that her ability to see what's going on in her daughter's life and to see her daughter for who she is and provide wisdom in that moment is really what Benithia wants, even more than the degree. She wants to be seen, she wants to be seen by her mother. She wants to be validated and given provision by her mother. And, even though George was wrong in a lot of the things that he stated, it does stand to reason that the provision of the loving mother matters more than what you might think the provision of your degree or your debate is. And so, when she relates to her like that, and then Benithia appreciates it, it just shows you the true value of human connection, and not just shallow connection of I fed you this morning, but deep connection of you're my child.
I see you. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about when the scene when George Murchison, like the first time when Benita cuts her hair off, right? She wants to exhibit her natural textured hair, and she and George leave out and go to the play. And Ruth is like, she's about to ask him a question. He's like, and Walter Lee says, don't nag me. Don't ask me about your questions. She's like, why are you always fighting me? It's like, well, because basically you always nagging me. You don't understand my dream. You don't want to hear about my dream. You don't want to support my dream. Like, just leave me alone. And then she's like, do you want some hot milk? He was like, no, because she's like, well, you just been drinking. He's like, I don't want any hot milk. Well, you want something to eat. She's offering, this is what she offers. I can cook for you. I can give you your child. I can give you a child. I can raise your child. I can be nurturing. I can be loving. I don't have any else thing, but honestly, the fact that she has given you a child, she's raised and loved your child as you have as well. She cooks for you. She cooks for whoever's in the house, and she works. So she's giving you all of herself. And she's like, I can't give you money. That's not, you're the provider, but I can give you some warm cooked food out of a place of love. And he rejects that too. And he's fighting her. He's like, all Black people know how to do is moan and pray and have babies. But it's like, you impregnated her. Okay. You can't get pregnant. Last I checked, you can't get pregnant by yourself. Okay. So you contributed to her having a child, her getting pregnant the last time, and with Travis. So don't try to act like you weren't on the scene, brother. You were on the scene. But he's just like he's frustrated with not having his dream realized and nobody in the house being in one accord with him. So he's taking it out on her, right? And so they argue at each other, and she goes in the bedroom, Cedric, and then she's just kind of weeping, and he comes in. I think he settles down. He's like, I guess we don't know how to speak softness to each other. And they exchange this beautiful, soft understanding of why each other's been frustrated, and then they reminisce about how they used to dream about having a house of their own, and they begin to kiss. And that's a beautiful scene. How did that scene impact you, that exchange, what I just mentioned? The argument to them kind of reconciling.
Yeah, it was great behavioral modeling. The fact that they were able to have that resolve, because a man and woman, they do need to do that. They need to be able to calm down and just be simple. Simple with hyperbole or the raised voices, or the need to go back and forth, but the need to be palatable and understanding. And so that's great modeling to me, and I think that the author putting that into the book just shows the caliber of the story that they were putting into our community. That, yeah, I know, in the ideal world that we live in, the man wants to go out, he wants to do this, the woman wants to have her expectations met as well, and it doesn't have to be a continual argument. It doesn't have to be continual discrepancy. There should be a time where you both let your guards down, embrace one another, and share a slice of romance. Have some romance in your life.
Yeah. I like when once they kind of we have to talk about, so the moment, Cedric, when the mother, Walter Lee, and they discover Walter Lee has not been going to work. He's being rebellious, right? Because he's really on some like, well, I'm going to own my own business, so I don't even need to go to work anymore. Or I'm mad at y'all because y'all not on my team about this. So fuck it, I ain't even going to work. I'm just going to be cruising around Chicago, observing luxury and Negroes, doing the common thing. And so the mother, the mother and the wife are like, what is wrong with you? You were tripping up in here. And then the mother has an understanding, because Walter Lee is told that his wife may abort his child. And Walter Lee is so emotionally unstable at this point and just frustrated. And she's like, tell her not to abort your child like your father would. And Walter Lee doesn't do that. And so the mother's like, okay, everything is out of control. So she gets her hat, she goes after him, comes back, and she says, Walter Lee, here is $6,500. Put a portion of that aside for Benita's medical school, and the rest of it you have the responsibility of taking care of. So at that point, she's giving him the baton. You be the man of the head of the house. At this point, I'm trusting you with this money to do what's right. Just take care of Benita, and then whatever else, you can do whatever you want to with it, right? So the idea of them having a checking account is major. You understand? Most people, Black people, when you're poor, you go to the currency exchange, right? To cash a check. But she's saying, open an account, and I'm trusting you wholly as a man, as a provider. I'm going to put you in that position that you want to be in. I'm trusting you. She does that, and he can't believe that she's trusting him with that money. And he's just overwhelmed with joy, and he's humbled, and he's just so happy. So what are your thoughts about that exchange too? How she gave over and trusted him, and he was so surprised.
Right. You know, the same way earlier in the story, when the father gave the money to the boy, I see that happening again here, where you see his desire, his tenacity, and he really needs the wheels of endowment. He needs those legs up under him of endowment in order to really be the man that he desires to be. And so when she gives him that money, it's almost like a diploma. You know, it's almost like a certification, a validation of the authority that is now being bestowed upon you to go out into the world and do great things. The same way when you graduate college, they give you a degree, and then you're now bestowed to go out into the world and do great things. She was doing the same thing for him with that $6,500. And so I felt that was a major victory for him. And in that moment, he was high off life. You know, somebody out of this whole mix got to experience the feeling of being high off life. And, you know, again, that's growth. That's arrival. That is the culmination of everybody's hard work, that this particular individual gets to feel for a minute. Everybody's pursuit of happiness, he gets to feel that by you giving him that money. And so that's my take. I see a lot of symbology in it.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit on there was a conversation that Ruth, the wife, had with the mother when she's trying to persuade the mother to come aboard of Walter Lee's idea of investing in a liquor store. The grandmother says, well, I don't want to basically invest in a liquor store. I don't want that on my ledger. You know, I'm almost close to going to heaven. I don't want God to see that as a marker on my report card, right? And she's like, and she said, besides, we ain't business folks anyway. And she said, well, ain't nobody business folk until they go into business. And I'm like, let me just let me just hang my hat on that statement, because I thought that was such an important line, because it's like, because generally speaking, American Blacks, outside of right after Reconstruction, we had a period where we were very successful, generally speaking, in certain pockets of the country, right? Where we interdepend on each other economically and stuff, group economics. But a number of us did not have that. So the grandmother all she knows is getting the freedom, getting the north side, getting Chicago, the Great Migration, right? And just having a roof over your head and nobody trying to lynch you. That's progression for her, right? That's progress. But her and her limited thinking, she didn't think that business people don't start out business people. They learn about a particular industry, right? Or maybe they tailgate somebody, and then they invest in it slowly but surely. So, but she just think that, no, we're not supposed to be business people. We're not business people, but you can become a business person. You just have to acquire that kind of knowledge and practice. So I thought that was interesting that she had a limited view as it relates to business, not buying a house, but you know what I'm saying? So I thought that was an interesting point, that ain't nobody's business people until they go into business. And I thought that was such a profound observation that Ruth had. So we know Ruth has wisdom too, right? Even though she's not formally educated. So yeah, I thought that was a really, really interesting point. But then I want to fast forward to when Walter Lee's friend comes back and tell him Willie is gone. And Willie is gone is another way of saying the money is gone. And you ain't gonna ever see it again. So Walter Lee trusted Willie and this other guy to make an investment, put a down payment for this liquor store. Everybody put a down payment down for the house, for the bar. So again, instead of Walter Lee Younger putting beneath this money aside and taking this $3,500 that's left and investing it, he put the whole thing. And when he discovered that it's gone, he falls down like a child, like a toddler in some way, and begin to have a fit and cry. And he does this in front of his own mother and wife and sister. And it's not a good look. He was devastated that his mother had entrusted him finally, and he totally sabotaged the whole thing and blew it because he trusted in two other men who swindled him. But let's talk. Let me hear you. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, classic example of you trusting somebody, your supposed homeboys, and you getting swindled. You know, you getting played. You putting these people ahead of your own family. You know, because you have an idea that with all that's at stake and all that's on the line, that you're going to go out there and do it your own way and come back with the big bag for everybody. But now you done messed up. You know you done messed up, right?
Right.
And so, he had that fit because he realized just how terrible of a mistake he made, and he should have known better. That's the other thing about it. He should have known better. You live in a time where you got so many people cutting each other's throats. You got people backstabbing and doing things the shortcut way instead of doing things the appropriate way, and because people don't got nothing, right. And so it's almost like there were more conversations that he needed to have with his father about how to operate, how to deal with other people out in the community. He almost had a false sense of confidence by entrusting this other guy with his money, and now this guy ran off with your money. And so, and it's at the cost of your sister, who was actually trying to do something that was solid. You give her this money to go to college, she finishes college. That's solid. That's not as risky, and so he was wrong. That is now a classic example of ego going wrong. He was wrong. He was flat out wrong in that situation.
Yeah,
that's why he had to cry like that. That's why he had to put his face on the floor like that.
And Benita was, of course, disgusted by this act of selfishness. And again, like you're saying, he's thinking he's doing it for the good of the whole family. You can only take that type of risk when everything else is lined up financially. You know what I'm saying? And when the risk is only impacting you. If you had no children, no wife, and it's just you, fine. But it's impacting everybody in the house.
That's right. Yeah, you can't take that risk at all in that situation. You can't. That's not a risk that you can take. And again, that's why I say he needed to have more conversations with his father that unfortunately he was not unable to have because he looks naive, in the situation. And when you have that much of people's livelihoods on the line, you have to know which next move is the actual best move. And so that's why when grandma put that money down on that house, that was the author telling you how wisdom wins out. You know, she knows, listen, we need to get to a safe place, and then everybody could go out and figure out how to flourish. You know, don't put the carriage before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so yeah, he bumped his head. He cracked his head open on that one.
Yeah, and then we get to the point where Benita is, you know, the Nigerian Joseph Asagai comes over. He's all excited. Benita is feeling despondent, hopeless. She's irritated, and like she's just like, I don't even care. I don't want to be a doctor. I'm done. Everybody's humanity is crazy, and like ain't no amount of healing I do will heal the essence of humanity. I can fix the superficial, the body. But the psyche of humanity, I can't fix that. My brother's a fool. My mother's a fool too for giving him the money. And then we find out Benita does want a part of the insurance money, even though she's been pretending like she don't care what the mother does with it. We realize that she's been lying. She did care. And she talks about what led her to wanting to become a doctor, which is the childhood friend of hers busting her head on the concrete. And then Joseph Asagai, I love this because, and we'll wrap it up real soon, how Joseph Asagai talks about, she's like, you're too idealistic. And she says to him, you're too idealistic. And don't they have money? Don't they grow money where you from? In Africa? So you see, she flipped it. So now she's attacking him, right? Now it's not about, you know, unguya, uya, it's none, no dancing, none of that. All that's gone. She's like, yeah, that's cute. I don't even care about our connection to Africa anymore. Right now, I need to get to school, medical school, and I don't have that money. So I don't want to hear no flowery monologue about Africa and we're gonna come together. Right? So she's over, and he in turn says, I'm not idealistic. Because you know, how like once we get into, let's say we realize this revolution where things change and we unify. He's like, but in the quiet of the night, you know, when things are better for us as Black people, how a Black leader won't turn around and kill me, or some Black person will just slit my throat like a white person to slit my throat, you know? And it was like, whoa, that was a heavy monologue he delivered. Like, you just have to keep trying to improve and contributing to society. Like, it's not going to end with you. You're not going to fix all of society, but just do your part. And that's all you can really do. And so I thought that was interesting. He's like, that's all I can do. It's contributing the best way we can and keep it moving, but it's not going to end with us. So what are your thoughts about that scene, that interaction?
Just the fact that they were in two different spaces in life. And Asagai he's in more of the position that Benithia and her family wants to be in, but he seems to have his head on his shoulders enough to understand how they're still small pieces of the bigger picture. And so you still, no matter what, you still have to, and move one brick at a time. Nobody can expect that your whole life is going to change overnight. Have more wisdom in the scenario. It's not going to happen overnight. You don't get your degree overnight. Your life doesn't change overnight. You're not even going to be the person. So calm down, focus on what you can do, and don't dwell on either the past or that which you can't control. And so he's providing resolve to her, and he's almost like emerging as the gentleman who is helping to raise her esteem and helping to calm her spirit, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. I thought that, let me just say, the acting was incredible from everybody. I was especially moved by Esther Rowe. I have to talk about on the acting tip when Esther Rowe, when she discovers that Walter Lee has lost the money, you know, risking it with Willie and all that. And the way she's like, God, Father, give me strength. Give me strength. I mean, Cedric, I cry every time because the idea of it's such a reminder of like how so many American Blacks coming from the South, how they just suffered so much like hardship, you know, and they had to rely on their spirituality, their faith to just endure and to overcome, and then to see the bigger picture and then to restore their hope again, right? To move forward. So all that to me was like, what she kind of like illustrated, like how our ancestors had to just push through when they was always experiencing opposition, you know, not 24/7, but frequently enough to just want to give up, but they have a resilience in them. But she felt so vulnerable, and it was so beautiful. It was just so bravo. I just had to speak on that because I'm just always so moved in my soul when I see her, you know, giving over to that vulnerability, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, go ahead. No, go ahead. Epic. Say it again.
No, I thought that the acting was absolutely epic, in a sense that you could feel the emotions, the tensions of the times, and that emotional expression is what allows you to really feel what life was like in the 50s. Mm-hmm. You know, everything has big time gravity behind it. You know, mm-hmm. Everything has tension in it. Everything has pressure in it. You know, mm-hmm. All the different aspects of life have pressure in them because we're literally trying to thrive, but we're still in survival mode.
Yes.
And you know, that dichotomy is where the pressure comes in at. We want to thrive, but we're in survival mode, and it seems like one thing after another, you know, but we won't give up. And you know, we get wiser, we interact with different people from different classes, and you know, we get into different rooms with people who know a little bit more than us, and we try to figure it out. And at the end of it all, hopefully some child gets to experience the fruit of our labor. Mm-hmm. And somebody is enlightened after all. And so, you know, I felt a lot of that through the acting, and the script is written beautifully. Is something that we need to continue to. We need to keep that as a part of American literature for sure, international literature for sure.
Yes, and so I won't go into how it concludes for those who haven't seen it. But I will wrap this up and say, I hope you guys enjoyed our reaction to the classic story of Raisin in the Sun by the masterful Lorraine Hansberry. And if you have experienced Raisin in the Sun, whether you read it or you saw the film or the television adaptation, please comment below how it impacted you, the story or the film or the acting, any aspects of. Please chime in below. Cedric, did you want to shout out any of your businesses or your pursuits and share it with the audience before we go?
I do a daily TV show called America's Next Motivator. We are live at 9 p.m. through the week, with the exception of Thursdays. And we bring people onto the show, such as China Colston, to share your life story, your life journey, including the work that you do today to uplift the community. And so that's my main project. And so get in touch with me. I'm at Cedric Speaks on Instagram. I am Cedric Riley on Facebook. And my show, America's Next Motivator, is available for you to become a member of that community. Absolutely.
Okay, right on. Thank you so much, Cedric. I was like, I can't wait to do this with Cedric, because I'm like, you're so observant, you're so articulate, you have a great understanding and wisdom, and you appreciate the art. So I'm like, this is going to be really, really great. So thank you so much for expressing and sharing in this reaction to Raisin in the Sun. Everybody, as you know, I'm an actress and indie filmmaker. You can always download my film, Sweet Thing or Dark Seed, or you can buy a Sweet Thing t-shirt for yourself or somebody you think is a sweet thing. Everybody, happy Saturday, and take care. Peace. Chinese.
Peace.
Peace.
Mr. Wilmington, it is a privilege to be your wife this day and the days ahead. I love you, babe. Happy anniversary. Thank you.
My poem is titled Dark Seed. Mommy! We can make liars out of the naysayers and bricklayers of deception, those who have tried to curse my birth from its very inception.
Come on, baby.
We both said we didn't want kids.
I know.
Matter of fact, you insisted on it.
I know, but that was 5 years ago. You know, I've changed my mind.
Can we have this conversation?
Can't you picture a little me or a little Idris Jr. running around here getting on my last?
You're just romanticizing shit. You're not thinking about how much we'd be giving up. There'd be no more me time. No more you time. No more we time.
I want to have your goddamn baby. I want to have your baby.
Sweet thing is you. Sweet thing is me. Sweet thing is our presence, the way we move, the way we talk, the way we sway, the way we smile, the way we show up, our voice, the bounce in our step, our swag, the way we laugh, the way we leave our sweet presence in the presence of others. Sweet thing is funky. Sweet thing is sassy. Sweet thing is soft. Sweet thing is gentle. Sweet thing is powerful. Sweet thing is resilient. Sweet thing is fun. Sweet thing is spunky. Sweet thing is unique. Sweet thing is you. Sweet thing is the way you walk and talk, and your swag. It's a mood, it's a feeling. It's all of us. Get your Sweet Thing t-shirt at ChinaLColston.com. Thank you. Bye, sugar.